They all come about because somebody left it in too long. Y'all are skeptical, I don't care. I don't know. Yeah, I like that one too. That's a good one. Oh, it's slushy though. I see.
You guys hear the captain of the captain of Nigerian soccer team wanted to apologize to all the Nigerian fans who came from Africa like a long way for the fact that they didn't go anywhere in the cup. So he offered to pay for all of their like expenses for coming out, like their airfare, their hotels and shit and everything for coming out. All they had to do was send him their name, bank account number, email address.
Really? Is that a real thing?
And we're off and running here, so welcome to Fully Disclosed Podcast. This is our very first episode. So I decided to, instead of having one individual to interview, I decided to have a panel of guests. With me today is my beautiful wife, Kara. Say hi to the folks at home, Kara.
Hello.
All right, the 10 people listening just said hello back. All right.
We're 4 of them.
All right, and next up with us here is Mr. America himself, Kyle Kappas. Say hi to the people, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, and Mr. Phil Saylor, whose phone is very unprofessionally already ringing.
Put him on the air.
Go ahead. All right.
Hello. You're on the air.
Good. There you go. What are we talking about?
I guess your bike ride?
Micron?
Yeah, we're talking about Micron.
I guess we are now.
Yeah. I don't know what a micron was before, but I know what it is now.
Say what now?
Sorry, my brother took me on a journey.
Where'd you go?
Are you supposed to take her on a journey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell him if he pedals himself over here, you can join us for the second half.
Yeah.
Where are you at? Your house?
Wow.
Brad's house.
We were just out there. We went to Kmart on our bike.
So you're an idiot.
Oh, yeah, man. That's a hike for the 7-year-old.
so long to do.
Yeah, let's
Faster than me.
Alright.
keep this rolling here.
Well, yo, head this way if you can. We gotta get going on this.
All right, James, you're a talker, so we got to go.
All right, leave it out.
That's it. All right.
I do kind of like the idea of having a panel of phones. People can call in and comment. But they're not listening when they comment.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
Kind
So it's completely irrelevant.
My mom's going to call in a little bit. Want to know about the clothes she sent?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, and people are just going to call the next podcast and ask about stuff that happened on this one. Like, hey, about that comment that you made like 2 weeks ago, I take an issue with that. All right. So let's
Skip Phil.
Hi, I'm Phil. People, I'm Phil.
Phil Saylor.
It's good to meet you.
I didn't.
To me, you look like the side of Bradley's laptop.
That's his last name, not his occupation.
Like this side of my laptop. That's what everyone looks. That's what everyone looks like from Phil's perspective. So I mean.
Such bad joke.
That is such a bad joke.
All right. So now that we started off on a very unprofessional level, let's go in to actually.
Professional, yeah. Hard to kidnap.
Let's go into actually what I think is a very serious topic. It's a little hard. I think it's a little tricky for men to talk about things that are issues for women without seeming either like they think that women need to be defended when they don't think that. I mean, I think I care about women's issues in the sense that I have women in my life who I care about. So generally, things that they care about are also things that I care about. So, I mean, I don't know. Kara, you got a comment on that?
No.
No. Got the ball rolling quickly here. You got to be
Open-ended questions, man. What you got? Like a psychological interview.
So you relate to women's concerns to feel closer to them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily that they need defended or that even, and women would also say, like, men should have no opinion in these mean,
what are we dancing around here? Abortion?
Well, yeah, I guess let's start. First thing I want to start off with here is the Supreme Court striking down the buffer zone on abortion clinics, which used to be 35 feet.
Buffer. Something about a buffer.
Yeah. Anyway, it used to be about 35 feet. So anyone who is familiar with soccer, like that's 10 yards essentially. That's a wall. Like on a free kick, that's how close the opposing team can be to the ball. Like it's not far. You can spit that distance.
So abortion has the same repellent zone as a soccer ball.
Or a loogie.
Yeah. Yeah, so they struck this down, and what I find is actually one of the most interesting things about this decision is that the Supreme Court has the biggest buffer around it in the country. You're not allowed to protest anywhere on its grounds, in its building, and now they've even stretched that to include the plaza in front of the building. So everywhere else where they're telling people like it's an infringement on free speech to have to yell essentially like 10 yards to somebody, they're not affording people where they work.
I mean, that's two of the three branches, executive branch of the federal government do that.
What's the
You
point
certainly
of the
can't
buffer
get near Pennsylvania Avenue talking shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, isn't that always the case, though? Like, you can do this everywhere except where we work. Since we're the ones making the laws, we'll allow it. We'll allow all this crap to happen.
In Georgia or wherever it was, where you can pretty much have guns in churches and in airports.
Yeah, except government
for where
buildings.
we work.
One thing that makes me feel safer, it's everywhere. Just everywhere having guns.
Yeah.
That
Makes
I
you feel
I
safe.
sleep so well at night thinking I'm surrounded by guns.
I don't think you believe that at all.
Yeah, that sounds.
I do, but I'm very sure you don't.
That was a very astute observation,
Yeah.
Kyle.
I think it's for their protection as well, because I guarantee when you're walking into a situation like this is one of the most emotionally charged situations that anyone's going to walk into, and when you get in people's faces when they're in that kind of emotional state, it can only lead to, I think, violence.
It's to avoid conflict ambiguously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you still allow them their free speech. They're still allowed to stand back and yell and stuff, but they're far. They're still.
You can still hear them.
Yeah, you still hear them. Like there were people
stick
there.
with you forever.
Why fix a system that works? Why fix something that's not broken?
I don't understand what the fix is. Like they increased this buffer zone?
No, they took it away.
Oh, so
It's
now they
gone
can
now.
stand by the door
Yeah,
and scream
they
at you.
can stand anywhere. They can be in your way. They can be when you're. I think there should be like a personal buffer zone around people in general. That any unwanted contact, like if you come within like this little bubble, like I have the right to punch you. If you come in like unwelcomed and like in my face, antagonistic.
Well, you can't just get the right to punch someone, and I can understand like the public allowance of where they're allowed to be, but the clinic itself should be allowed to ban them from being on their property.
Right.
The
So they just
property
go
that
like
their
across the
establishment's
street.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, can't the people who own the property
No,
have a specific...
I think because it's Planned Parenthood, it's technically government.
Well, what if it's not
building,
Planned
But it's still
Parenthood?
the property of that government building.
Okay. See, I was wondering about that, but I still feel like even with people's private property, they have certain like right to pass laws where like you are allowed to like gather on people's lawns.
Wow.
And stuff. Like, so I feel like there, even like the private property thing, there is to an extent. Like, you should still be on private property and gather because you have the, you have the
private property.
I see. I don't.
There's no one allowed to gather in my yard if I say they can't. I don't care what law defends them on that. That's my private property.
Well, what if like a group of people went up to a church and started like protesting against that religion?
Yeah, like
Or
right on the
started-
church's doorstep.
But
What are they gonna do?
They call it a hate crime.
Right.
How is
Isn't
that
it?
not a hate crime?
Right.
It's
I
the
I
same
can't really
damn
disagree
thing.
with you.
I mean, I think that's the nail on the head there. So we're gonna go on to the next thing.
Well, let me share with you. Rarely have I felt more uncomfortable than when I was confronted by two different kinds of protesters.
Yeah.
One was on 3rd Street.
Okay.
They lined both sides of the street with pro-lifers, and they were shouting things, even though I think they were supposed to be quiet. But the whole street was like, I think these people are going to jump in front of my car.
Right.
I read the signs, kept going. Whatever happens is going to happen, But and then I was in Indianapolis, and It was a school trip. We get out of this big van, and some gentlemen with tea bags hanging from their hats greeted us with giant guns. We came for the museum, sir. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is it's not anymore about the right to speak your mind and the right to protest. It's about the right to be as antagonistic and in your face and obnoxious as possible. Because I think even some of these people, like, they say that they feel so passionately about this and that's why they're doing it. But I think they're really doing it because of all the attention they're getting from doing it.
And they're lawfully protected
makes
from
them feel better.
retaliation.
Yeah, it makes them feel better about themselves.
I mean, they have First Amendment rights, but we have the right to ignore them, too.
Right,
And if
exactly.
we can't ignore them,
We do,
they're
but
infringing
That's
on our
right.
rights.
They don't have the right to force us to listen to them. And by entering our personal space, they're forcing that on us.
In a situation like that, when you're comparing emotional abuse towards physical abuse, where someone in a state of going to get an abortion is more hurt or affected by words said to them through choices they've made than if someone were to just simply attack them. And you have no retaliation of that could cause them as much pain comparatively between physical and emotional other than to physically attack them. That's the conflict that you're trying to subdue by giving the buffer zone to prevent that.
Right. The buffer zone, I think we're all pretty much in agreement, was a good thing, and it's pretty stupid that they struck it down. I think that's pretty much the consensus that we've reached on that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, 10 yards is not far. You can
dissuade
fit
one
that
person from having a safe abortion, maybe they're going to get an unsafe one.
Right,
That's
and that's exactly what happened before Roe versus Wade.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what was happening. So, I mean, all right. Next thing I want to talk about is the Hobby Lobby decision, and I know Phil wants to kick off the ball on this, but I want to make a couple comments first. First of all, I want to point out it was a 5-4 decision, a very close decision on the Supreme Court, and what I found very interesting is that all 5 men voted in favor of Hobby Lobby in this decision, and all 5 men are Catholic. And I find that just a little bit convenient on their part.
I find it to be a poor representation of the American people.
Right. That's a better way of stating it, I think. To have 5 Catholic men all serving on the Supreme Court, I think is definitely not a representation.
But you got to look at it through the lens of other case law from the Supreme Court too. I mean, it's right along party lines. It's not just that they're men and Catholic; it's that they're conservatives.
We could probably use an overview on what Hobby Lobby is.
It's a craft store that hearts Jesus.
It sounds.
Hobby Lobby was.
It's kind of like a Michael
Yeah.
A.C. Moore.
Right.
More like A.C. Moore.
All right, well, how is this tying in with the Supreme Court?
What they were fighting the Supreme Court. All right, and this is actually good because there may be people who have no idea what we're talking about. Like, Hobby Lobby is a craft store who, from the new Obamacare mandate, decided that certain contraceptions that Obamacare mandated that they needed to provide in their health coverage for their employees were against their religious principles. Now, this ties in with the idea that corporations are people. And if a corporation is a person, then that person has a religious freedom right. And that's what the decision was about. So what they ended up going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in Hobby Lobby's favor, was that corporations are people, people have religious freedoms, and that it was against the religious beliefs of Hobby Lobby to provide this contraception to their employees. And that makes your head spin to say it that way, but that's exactly what happened. But the thing is, and I need to point this out too, it's not all contraception that Hobby Lobby was opposed to.
You talking like birth control, stuff like that?
Yeah. There were 4, and it was only women's contraception. Nothing, like they still provide vasectomies and Viagra for men on their health coverage. So, if you're a man in this country, you're doing pretty well, but if you're a woman, it's been kind of a shitty month or so. But what they decided is there's 4 in particular types of birth control that they say are abortion aids.
Plan B is one of them.
And Plan B is one of them. But every organization whose job it is, the Pharmaceutical Administration, the American Association of Gynecologists and Obstetricians, everyone whose job it is to say what this contraception is, says it's not an abortion aid. But Justice Alito, one of the guys who ruled in favor of Hobby Lobby, said it's not in the court's place to decide whether their religious belief is based in reality.
So what's happening is the government's telling Hobby Lobby they have to provide this, and Hobby Lobby's saying no.
Right.
I think there's a bigger issue.
Based on their religious principle. And the bigger issue is obviously our corporations people. But
Bigger.
I mean, that's obviously the bigger issue, but let's start with this smaller one first and, like, the doors that it can possibly open. I mean, Kara, if you worked for Hobby Lobby and you were somebody who wanted one of these contraceptions, you know, as part of your plan, how would you feel about the loyalty of the company that you work for? Like, they're obviously not representing you, are they? They don't have your interest in mind at all.
There's a select few people who own Hobby Lobby or whatever who are Catholic, and they're forcing their religious views on everybody else.
But they're not Catholic. The people who own Hobby Lobby are
whatever
not.
they are.
They're not. Yeah, I do want to point that out because I don't want to shit on all Catholics.
Yeah, no, I recently met Simone Campbell. She's a pretty awesome Catholic.
I mean, Pope Frank is doing pretty well. So
I love him.
And he's been one of the guys who's spoken out against this even being an issue. He said that Catholics, yes, in the Catholic Church we believe these things are wrong, but these aren't the things that the Catholic Church should be caring about. And I think that's exactly the direction that the church should be going in. But that's a whole other thing. It definitely gets into the idea of, are corporations even people? And if they are, if you're going to go on the premise that a corporation is a person, does one person's religious right supersede another person's religious right? Like, if I don't believe that this contraception is an abortion aid, but you do, does your belief that it is supersede mine that it's not?
For me, that comes down to, before it comes down to, like, that argument is where the government has a place to force the availability of that upon anyone providing this health care. It's the choice of the provider that they're using with this plan system that they have, where they provide this certain kind of health care, where the government's saying that this needs to be available.
That sounds to me like an argument, though, to decouple health care from employment. Because that, if you're going to say that, because when you get employed, and if your employer is the kind of employer that provides health coverage, which is where most people get their health insurance, is from their employer, and that's really your only true option for health insurance, you need it to cover the things you need it to cover. Which is why they have mandated that it has to cover certain things. That's the reason for it.
But if that's why if that's the main focus on people with their choice of employment, the type of health care coverage they have, there's other options, there's other forms of employment to pursue to get health care providing what it is you're individually looking for. Not that it needs to be blanketed by the government saying everyone needs to provide this. It's your choice to choose from what different type of coverage you're looking for.
Who goes in applying for a job knowing what health care they have?
Right. No one.
Most people.
Really? I mean, most people go in and ask about the health coverage, but most people don't know going into a job.
And like, it's
Well,
hard
yeah, they
enough
go
to
in
get
and
a
ask.
job anyway. You shouldn't have to select from.
Right. And that was the point I was going to bring up, is that would be a valid point if jobs were very readily available and you could just jump from one place to the next and keep making it. Like, especially if it's a job where you're making $15 to $16 an hour versus a job where you would be making, like, I don't know, $20 to $25 an hour. So it's a big pay raise, but to get that pay raise, you have to give up the health insurance that covers the thing you need it to cover.
That sounds like a legitimate choice, though. That sounds like something that happens in life when you're pursuing employment. Weighing, the wages earned compared to the benefits received.
I think this is all putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I think the Supreme Court set troubling precedent and broke with the Establishment Clause. I'm sorry, Kyle, the Constitution has this thing they call the Establishment Clause, and it basically says that our government's not going to make any rules respecting religion. That doesn't mean you can't do whatever you want in terms of religion, but we're not going to make laws about it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is case law. That's a law.
Right.
So now there's laws about religion on the books.
Mm-hmm.
How did Scalia especially sign on to that?
Scalia. I think that comes a little bit back to my Catholic men. That the convenience of it, because, like you said, Scalia, who is a guy who typically is a pretty strict constitutionalist, In most cases, but in most cases he is. The decision from him is particularly surprising for that reason. So it does seem a little convenient that the 5 Catholic men. But I do want to touch the are corporations even people subject, because I want to point this out. If this podcast ever, God forbid, got popular enough, I mean, not God forbid, but I mean, I never planned it to, but if it ever got popular enough that it started making money, I would have to declare this podcast a company. So this podcast would now become a corporation, okay? So does that make the podcast its own entity, or am I in charge of the podcast? Because if you're going to say, is the podcast me or am I the podcast? You can't say that because the podcast can die without me dying. We are 2 separate entities. The same way I can die and the podcast could live on if someone else takes over. You can't, so it's obviously a separate entity from me. You can't tie us together.
But then you bring in basic American principles where it's majority rules. Corporation isn't necessarily a person, it is a conglomerate of people wherein the majority of those people have based the views of that corporation off the majority of the people that
But that's not
make
what's
it up.
happening.
Corporation is a venture.
Well, yeah, and even in the because this decision is supposed to say that it's only for privately, closely held companies, but it doesn't actually say that. So there's nothing holding public companies back from trying to get the same decisions their way. And when you talk about a public company where you're like, oh, it's a conglomerate of people and it's like a majority of that, that's not what ends up happening, because there's always one guy who ends up controlling majority share or something, that it's just his views that he's imposing. So to say okay, if my podcast then becomes me, it's an extension of me, then I am the podcast, which means the podcast has, if you're going to make that distinction that the podcast is essentially getting its values from my values, then when I go, it goes. You would have to link us together.
Its values could change. Values do change, and individuals' values change. Why come to corporations?
Yeah. All right. That's actually a valid point, but I just disagree. I disagree with the entire statement that a corporation, this non-living entity, is a person with the same individual rights as me. That kind of pisses me off to say that I, a person, has equal rights as Walmart, a conglomerate. That just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. They're not a person.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Our Constitution, but it was written to protect white men who owned land.
Pretty much. I mean, that's really the extent of it, wasn't it?
And so their ventures are similarly going to see
That's the whole different
protection.
argument.
I'm not going to start arguing about that, but
Yeah.
that's who it was written for and by.
I can just see where you can shape views of a corporation based around those that make it up. Yes, it itself is a non-sentient entity, but it's built up through the views, the work.
And I can see that maybe saying a corporation has a message that it's trying to share, but to say that it has the same rights as a living, breathing
What's the point
person.
of having rights then?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the point of having an opinion?
Yeah, what's the point of being a
living your own
person,
life?
like a living flesh and blood person?
Makes money pretty important
Yeah,
because it can speak now.
yeah. I mean,
It's magical piece of
But
paper.
it's still the money of the people that are building up the conglomerate. It's still it's going to have views or take views away from methods of operation, how the business works. That comes from those that make up those running the business. Not every business runs the same way. Everyone has different business practices.
What if it's publicly listed?
But if you're trying to let the same kind of rules across businesses, they all need to practice the same way. They all need to make the same ventures, the same risks in their investments, stuff like that. If you take it non-ethical, but it's the same idea. You're trying to control, make them all operate the same way. You're trying to do the same thing with their views. If you're saying they don't have the right to have their personal views of those people that make it up.
It's a pretty nice segue to offshoring corporation and Dodge. If that was on your list.
It wasn't. But you know what? Go ahead. Take us away, Phil, because it seems like you're jumping up a bit here.
I don't have a lot to say about that, actually. I feel like it's a shame that people don't feel any responsibility to the place that made them.
Right, and this is something I wish James was actually here because he and I were having this conversation the other day, that the selfish mentality of the I built it. It was me and nobody else helped me. Even if you want to say that it was all your money and you literally did all the work of the company yourself, you have no employees or anything, you still used public roads. You still used a bank or something to get a loan. Like you still owe somebody at least a little bit.
If not your first grade teacher.
Right. Well, yeah, the people who educated you. You owe the society that allowed you this freedom and the capacity to make what you make and get where you got. You owe them at least a small portion of what you're making, don't you? I mean, don't you have to feel at least a little bit of responsibility toward who allowed you and pushed you to get to where you are?
Yeah, it's knowing where you came from.
Right. I mean,
whether you feel gratitude or not, that doesn't obviate your responsibility to pay your taxes.
Right. Again, it's a responsibility. Like, I don't care if you like it or not. It's a responsibility, isn't it? Like, yeah.
And on top of that makes every single business that doesn't pull that nonsense less competitive because of it.
Absolutely, and that's
encouraging
why
others to do that.
And that's why companies, a lot of times you'll see companies fail and then you'll feel really sad that certain companies failed because it's like that company was actually trying to do something good. It just didn't make as much money as another one because they were doing all the bad business practices that fuck up the economy. Like, but because when you have laws on the books that allow for companies to do these things, the company is set up to make money. That's what it's set up to do. It's going to use every available aspect that you put into the law to make money. The only way to stop that is to change the laws and cut out loopholes. But, alright.
So are you lobbying for stricter government influence on businesses or less?
Definitely stricter. When I talk about government influence, though, it doesn't, and everyone's like, oh, more regulation is bad. Not necessarily. It's not. When you talk about regulation, it has to be smart regulation. There are regulations on the book that make absolutely no sense, and all it does is hold companies back from trying to accomplish what they're accomplishing. And then there are other regulations that have absolutely no rules, and it's just no holds barred. You can pump whatever shit down into the earth you want to get your natural gas out. Like, we don't even need to know what's in it. I mean, those kind of rules just don't make any sense. Those are areas where we need regulation, and then areas where we don't, we have tons of it.
And then as soon as you apply regulation, you could be inadvertently causing advantages towards certain businesses over others. You could be crippling one style of business over another.
It would be, it would absolutely be you are choosing one company over another, but you are typically going to be choosing companies that are performing good business practices, things that you want to encourage anyway.
Right down to the fact that they bring more money in.
Yeah, I don't care.
Maybe it's a fundamental change that society needs, like electric cars.
Maybe we start valuing something else more than money.
The thing that pisses me off most about this and stuff like this, like gay rights, is that it all comes down to like personal rights. Like, there are rights you can have, but like when you're talking about not marrying someone because they're the same sex, like what does that bother you? That doesn't hurt anybody else.
To allow somebody else to do something.
If a woman wanted contraception, who does that hurt if she has that? It helps, actually. But like, why would that hurt? Why would anyone be against that?
And I think a good segue into my next point is to talk about, if we really want to talk, what pro-life people who are against abortion really should be concerned about my next topic, which is the way we treat pregnant women in this country. Because if you look at the infant mortality rates and the amount of stillbirths in this country, our C-section rates, we have a 31% C-section rate. There's no way 1/3 of children can't be born naturally. Isn't that just a ridiculous statement? Like, how the heck
can you schedule your C-section for convenience sake?
Right. They do these things called, designer births, where they schedule your C-section and tummy tuck all in the same procedure. Like, I don't know. This just seems absolutely ridiculous. And when we're seeing such an increase in issues with babies, like, we're seeing more and more babies born with certain diseases. We're seeing more and more babies born, like, stillborn. We're seeing more and more babies born underweight, more and more babies born prematurely.
Miscarriages.
Miscarriages. And it all seems handle the pain of childbirth. That it's the most painful thing they'll ever experience in their entire life, and they pretty much can't handle it. And you're going to scream and poop and carry on, and it's just going to be this big, ugly thing. And that is completely against, I think, with the, like, isn't childbirth supposed, we all say it's a miracle, yet when we watch it, like, in a movie or on TV or something, it's always, get the fuck out. You see, like, the Exorcist girl with her head spinning. Like, isn't it, I don't know. Kara, what do you think?
Yeah. It's just, the biggest thing is, like, when you, like, a baby story on TV or something, like, you see all these women who are, like, deathly screaming and,
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to say it's not painful.
Right.
But your body was literally meant to do that specific thing. I think you can handle
Right.
it.
I mean, how
and it's not, and it's, like, the thing with, like, home birth and natural birth, like, I don't know, like, you were made to do that. Why put drugs into it?
I
To
mean,
make you feel better because you're uncomfortable.
I've never pushed anything out of my vagina.
Right.
I just don't have one,
Right.
but I've seen it happen, and I feel like if I were in that position, sign me up. Give me the epidural. I'm ready.
Right. And, well, I think
And I don't even like needles. So the idea of one last time, not a big
it's
fan,
available,
but
isn't that why we want it? Because we're in pain and
like,
it is
right.
available.
If you're in pain, you're obviously going to want something.
Right. That's the first thing you want if you're in pain. I mean,
But
but
the
then,
thing is, like, if you, like, so many women go into the hospital and they'll get the epidural, but then the epidural slows down
Right.
labor. So they give you Pitocin, and then that makes things hurt.
Up. It
also
makes
makes
it hurt
it
more.
more
Makes it
painful.
more painful. So then
You
they have to
up
up your
the
epidural to help with the pain, which makes you progress slower. And then they up your, and it becomes a vicious cycle until they just say, oh, she's not progressing, so we're gonna have to take her in
It
for a
puts the
C-section.
baby in distress, and then they say, "Oh no, the baby's in distress. Let's cut you open."
But do we want to take tools away from women? From
Well, it's not,
doctors?
I don't think it's about taking the tools away. I think it's about forcing it to be used correctly. When you look at countries like Sweden, with the way their health, all the Nordic countries really, Sweden, Finland, Norway, you look at even some of the Slovakian countries where the percentage of home births is like in the 70% in Japan, and then their infant mortality rate is like 2%. It's like the lowest in the world, and they're all giving birth like at home in the most natural fashion.
What are their birth rates compared to ours?
I mean, birth rates as in what? Like how many children? How many
children per populace do they have compared to we are?
For we are. Actually, I don't know that information. I would imagine that growth is fairly equal in most developed countries.
The issue I see isn't where these practices are directly influencing the negative birth, the birth failures, or however you want to phrase it. It's making giving birth a lot more convenient of an act. You can go give birth even if you're not particularly ready for it because you have medicinal ways to manage through the process.
Right, but there are so many things that are meant to happen during natural childbirth that don't happen when you're freaking doped up or you get a C-section, so it's a surgical thing. Your body doesn't release the oxytocin and, Phil, help me out, the other serotonin release that psychologically link the mother to their child. And I'm not trying to say that women who've had C-sections don't care about their kids as much as women who've given natural birth, because that would be a horrible thing to say. But there is something to be said for that all of the natural processes that your body goes through that's meant to evolutionarily link you to your child.
How many women are giving birth that aren't mentally prepared for giving birth?
I don't think a woman is ever mentally prepared to give birth unless she's had a kid before.
But I mean, making the
natural
choice to give birth.
Natural birth and like home birth are really just meant for people who have like no complications.
Right.
They're not
Right.
delivering like triplets, like just a normal.
Right, but say you and Kara make the conscious decision to have a child.
Right.
You want to do it right. You want to do the natural birth. You research it and you make all the decisions you want to make.
Right.
How many people are giving birth under those circumstances?
Not
Or is it a woman gets pregnant?
Not enough.
A woman gets pregnant and she's not prepared to give this birth. She doesn't want to have a baby, but she does the ethically correct thing to do and gives birth to it anyways. Avoids the abortion. She wants to go through with it. So in order to do that.
At least in her mind,
she was never planning for all this. She wasn't ready for it. Maybe she's too young. Maybe she's not actually even healthy enough to really give natural birth to a child. So she makes use of all of the medical benefits you can to have this birth.
And those are the kind of ignorant decisions that people make because not because they are ignorant or that because they're stupid, but because they just haven't taken the time or been just physically been made aware of. No one's told them about it before. Like, they've just never needed to know. They never thought it necessary.
I think if I remember right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like 90, 95, 99% of doctors and like OBs and med students who come out of school have never seen a natural childbirth.
Yeah.
Like, they learn.
Some people don't ever want to see a natural childbirth, though. Childbirth, natural or otherwise.
It's real rough when men have to watch a childbirth.
It personally disgusts me, so I wouldn't want to be subjected to that.
Who doesn't, though?
That's true.
Who doesn't remember seeing that video in health class in, like, 9th grade, though, with that woman with the extremely hairy...
I
Let
did.
me tell you. I saw nothing graphic in school as what I saw in Lamar's class.
Anyway, you had a point.
I have a couple. There's patient rights. Every hospital, every doctor will give you this pamphlet the first time they see you about your rights as a patient. You're enshrined in law.
And then they quickly ignore them after they hand you the pamphlet.
Well, you often have to speak your mind and be obstinate about it, which is kind of a shame. But you still have this right to self-determination in terms of how you interact with medicine. They're birth plans, and you tell the hospital, you tell your OBGYN what your birth plan is, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's really nice that there's an epidural there just in case.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and there are...
You can do natural in a hospital.
Epidurals and, like, a C-section and everything else is made for, like, that 2% of women who will have complications during birth.
Right.
Interesting is that there's often complications
People
because of
treat
the epidural.
pregnancy
Right,
like
yeah.
it's a disease anymore.
Because
like you're sick.
Yeah.
Like you have to go to the hospital because you're sick.
A little
You're
bit.
having
Yeah.
a baby. And
Yeah.
it's like, people used to have babies, like,
Wouldn't that be the biggest
working
epidemic
in
ever?
the field.
Like, pregnancy?
It's
It's the worst pandemic in human history. Like,
I love that. Your mom always says that. She's like, women used to just have a baby in the field, plunge them on their back,
Yeah.
and just keep
Yeah.
working.
Better pick that.
Yep. And go in and palm that baby out. Like.
I got a question for you too. Is any argument against unnatural childbirth also an argument against abortion?
I don't think so.
What's the difference?
One, there's a baby, one there isn't.
Yeah, you're talking about two.
There's actually a baby in both situations.
I think you're talking about two completely different types of decisions. If you're making a decision to keep a baby, then the information that is provided,
you have the right to
be made aware of the information.
That's the point. Like, that's the point we're making. Like, more women need to be more aware of
And
natural.
not the sensationalized
Agreed.
version that they
occurs
see
to
on
me that
TV
there's
or in movies, which most people never see somebody give birth, so all they know is the sensationalized version that they see in whatever TV show or movie they watch.
Which is nothing like it.
Which is nothing like that.
See, my opinion on the whole topic is all these medical practices come about to accommodate the mass amount of births that are happening.
Or to make ease on the doctor because he wants to get home by 5 o'clock.
Because he has a lot of babies to deliver. Because it's happening at such a rate of people not prepared to do it. Much more than what it used to be when people were popping them out in the field. It comes down to if you want to.
I wonder if anybody ever actually popped it out.
If you want if you want the fail-safe, like most basic, sure way to eliminate mass amounts of these numbers of statistics you have towards these bad births and what's going on with them, limit the amount of babies being had. That's the problem. There's so many babies being had that not all of these women are going to pop out all these natural childbirths. Can't happen. And the more you exponentially increase the amount of people having these children, the more these...
I would think it'd be more difficult with the surgical practice to accommodate more and more women giving birth than it would be the natural practice for more and more women giving birth.
The majority is still without the surgical practice, though. You said it's in the 30s.
No, because even here, I'll throw out some other countries here. Even in some third world countries, you got like Vietnam's at 36% C-section, Thailand 34%. All of Latin America has an average of 30%. That's tantamount to ours. Like
minority over the births being had. I'm talking about, look at the overall spectrum of how many babies are being had. Of course, you're going to have an increasing amount of surgical births with you increase the overall amount of births being had.
The thing that I do want to point out is there is a disturbing trend, and you can see this in almost every chart. The countries that have the highest percentages of C-sections also have the highest infant mortality rates, also have the highest percentage of stillbirths, also have the highest percentage of basically any kind of pregnancy complications.
C-sections are also often used when there's already complications during the birth.
Right. So the question it's a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Are more C-sections happening in these countries because maybe, let's say, their women are different or something and they just have more complicated births? Or are more C-sections happening in this country and causing...
If you look at the stats, that number has risen like... What was it? It used to be like 15% or something.
Yeah. Over the last 15 years.
But that's because C-sections are utilized in subpar conditions of giving birth.
Yeah, but do you really think that babies have...
Yes, more and more unhealthy women with unhealthy practices, with uneducated means of carrying a child are giving birth, which is turning more to the extremist forms of medical practice where they have to rely on C-section. More women are having birth. If you give live childbirth, your baby has a 25% chance to live. If we do C-section, we can increase that to 33%.
Right.
Still likely going to die, but we're taking this more extremist measure to minimize the chance of failure.
You're talking about like pregnancies that are complicated. We're just talking about normal births.
Yes, we're talking about C-sections, which are most utilized during complicated
But actually,
pregnancies.
more upper class individuals get C-sections than lower class, the dirty individuals that you were talking about.
And that's overflowing more in a higher society under cleaning traditions, because there's still benefits to that. You can have a C-section and still maintain certain parts of your body that are useful and desirable to keep in a state that they're already in. And that sounds terrible, but that is the case.
I guarantee you that there's a lot of women who get C-sections for the reason I don't want to screw up my vagina.
I have many friends who are dating a girl and they say, oh, she has a kid. Oh, she has a kid. Like friends that don't know my kid, and they'll tell me, no, it's all right. Get a C-section. Give me a little daps on it.
Right.
Like, okay.
Right. Okay.
Well, what's more important, your vagina or your abs?
My abs, personally, because my vagina, I don't really care. I can let that go.
What else I learned in Lamaze? Vaginas are very stretchy.
It's actually much cheaper, by the way, too.
Well, yeah, I don't care about the stretchiness and going back, but sometimes it rips and you have to thread that shit back up.
All right, guys. Let's move on here.
I'd tell you something, but nobody wants to hear it.
No, nobody does. No, there's nobody.
Feel better.
All right.
What?
Okay.
I think what I should do is, since I'm like the only one with any ideas on my list here, is I will just say a couple, and you guys add on to the character, add a dimension to the character that I'm throwing out there. Yeah. So whatever character I'm throwing out there, which anyone who doesn't know, my idea for a comic book is just the most lame, like, superheroes ever. People who have superpowers but are limited in, like, the worst possible fashion. Like someone who can fly but only a couple inches off the ground. Like, that's kind of the idea.
Someone who makes walking easier?
Yeah, I mean, you're just...
Good enough.
Better than rough terrain. Escalators would be weird. You wouldn't need boots.
Anyway, all right, first idea. All right, a woman who can control people's minds, which means she can control your actions, your thoughts, everything you're doing, but she has Tourette's.
I like it.
Anything?
We're going to need an example.
And you're saying that Tourette's gets...
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. You guys
gets transmuted into the subject that she's controlling.
Yeah, essentially everything that are her little Tourette's tics become who she's controlling.
That still sounds just as good as being able to control someone. The only downfall I can see is that you wouldn't be able to hide the fact that you're controlling them. You'd give away that he's under my control as he's spazzing out with his Tourette's.
Maybe it's just somebody she knows with Tourette's.
Yes, but if you're controlling multiple
I feel like they all know each other.
But if you're a superhero or a villain, right? Say she's a villain and she's trying to like complete some grand scheme and rob a bank, and you have her superheroes around, or she's known as this supervillain, and there's someone in the bank who's threatening out while he's trying to do something. It's going to lead on. Like everyone's going to be watching with threats, but then that has an overflow into society where it would cause discrimination towards people with Tourette's. They want to know if she's controlling them or not, if there's a scheme with it. It's just a guy, trying to go get a drink at the gas station or something. And he'll think he's trying to rob the place.
My question would be, what if she takes control of somebody who already has Tourette's? Does her Tourette's, square? Does it grow
does it stack?
Yeah.
Or does one cancel?
I feel like it would have to. I feel like it would have to stack. You have to stack Tourette's.
Maybe that's how she got. But maybe she got Tourette's because she mind controlled someone and made such a good connection with them, and the Tourette's transmitted over into her.
Origin story.
Yeah.
Story. There we go. All right. A guy who turns into an indestructible rage monster, but only when he's happy. Now, I think this is hilarious, and someone have heard you have heard me say this before. I think it's hilarious because his character has to be depressed and just sad all the time, because anytime he gets happy, he turns into this big rage monster and just starts flipping shit on everybody.
His birthday parties are terrible.
Yeah. at least for his kids. I mean,
Does he have kids, or does he get happy and be?
We can't throw. My dad likes clowns, and he'll just turn into a monster and kill everybody.
Gloomy, dreary birthday parties.
Anything my dad likes, we just kind of have to roll that out.
Now, is he like that because he gets angry for getting happy? Is he so morbidly depressed that happiness makes him angry and into this monster?
No. Nope. I think it's just a radiation thing. I don't know. I don't have a joke for everything, So, all right.
Who's that supposed to be?
And nobody.
Okay.
That was the Brad original right there.
No. Shitting on everything right now. All right.
What was that, Mama?
All right. On everything
I have one.
All right. Let's hear it, Kara.
A guy who throws fire or creates fire, but he's not immune to it.
So he burns himself every time he throws it.
Yeah.
So he would never actually want to use his
Yeah,
power.
so it'd be just the most awful power ever.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. Well, then his big enemy would have to be the same thing but with ice. It would
you get frostbite.
Yeah. He just gets frostbite and all his limbs just start to fall off and shit. All right. A guy who can walk through walls, but only if they're wooden, and he can't control it. So if he just starts walking and he finds a wooden floor, he just falls right down through it.
So gravity still controls him, even with his.
Well, I mean, yeah, gravity.
Transparency through the.
Pretty physically universal thing.
But then he just stop on the dirt under the floor.
Well, yeah, I mean, he just falls through the floor and whatever's underneath.
He would just stick to linoleum then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, anything that's not wood.
He wouldn't live in a wood cabin.
No.
I feel like I gotta be a little bit of a downer because there's no walls, with very few exceptions that are all wood.
Exactly. Maybe if it was a
drywall
or something, it could still be useful. But
the only thing holding me in this house is this little half-inch of sheetrock.
yeah. We're gonna have to start lead lining the houses again. All right, that's enough of that. So.
The nail hurt.
Yeah, he walks through a board and the nails stick into it. That's perfect.
How'd you lose your eye there, Dave? Well.
Or you think about bugs like termites in the wood. He tries to walk through wood and he's held back by an infestation of insects. That'd be gross.
That's so funny how not effective that was the second time. All right, let's go into the next section I'm going to call This Week in Science. It's just a couple science articles I want to wrap up. If anyone has anything they want to discuss with any of these. And the first one is actually pretty apropos. New study found that C-sections can cause epigenetic changes in infants. Epigenetic. See? Now that's a good question, isn't it? Epigenetic is essentially the switching or
Sorry, I didn't read the script.
the turning off or on of certain genes. That's an epigenetic change. So if what they're saying is children who are born with C-sections have something in their body, and what it's called is actually a term called methylation, which is the process that affects whether a certain gene becomes expressed or not. When they have C-sections, the methylation in those babies are significantly different in certain regions than they are in others. Now, what necessarily that means, we're not entirely sure yet, but what it shows is that it does affect even the genetic information of a baby, the way you're born.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's contributing.
Exactly. It could be the next stage in evolution.
It's contributing contributing their individuality in a mass population.
The ability to give birth on our own? Oh, not.
Oh, maybe we don't need it anymore. I mean,
well, would we pop out of heads like Athena?
You just went to straight pro C-section.
Well, now I do actually do see here. It did say, where is it? Significant differences in regions known to affect the immune system. Now, I'm not sure if that's in a negative or positive way, but
when you come into contact with a C-section that you don't in a natural birth?
Well, isn't
that
curious? Is it that you come into contact with something different, or is it that you didn't come into contact or go through something that you should have?
Well, it's evolution itself. There's so many people here, and as a species, we've become more reliant on technology and medicine that, as a species, our immune systems are becoming more obsolete.
I feel like
less necessary.
I feel like we keep talking about vaginas, and it's just not really fair to
I also love how the only person here who has a vagina is the one talking the least about the vagina. I mean, I think.
Do you have any thoughts about vagina?
Yeah. Have any vaginal thoughts there? I'm eating cookies. Well, I mean, isn't that just the thought of the vagina right there? I mean, I'm eating cookies. All right.
Yep. There's porn for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, cookie porn. Why not? Why not? I mean, I would imagine that if that were in existence, Cookie Monster would never leave his room.
Cookie Monster also eats other things. Okay. Just gotta back up Cookie Monster, my boy, real quick.
He was back up.
Didn't they turn him into the Veggie Monster? I saw that.
No, that was a stupid fucking meme.
I'm not gonna sing the song, but he enjoys vegetables. But
I've
cookies
said
are
enough
much
about
better.
vaginas.
Wait, what?
I've said enough about vaginas.
You can never really say enough about vaginas.
I mean,
actually, I think we have several times over.
All right, next.
Do you want to talk? Did you have more?
I have all kinds of things I shouldn't air.
All right.
Okay then.
Fossils of the largest known bird were discovered this last week. It had a wingspan of 6.4 meters. That's the height of a giraffe. It's a pretty big bird.
There was another avian feature in the news.
One of my favorite words, avian.
Avian.
Why?
Have you heard?
Have you heard?
I like birds.
This paper seems to be missing a certain ornithological piece. A certain reporting of the avian variety.
Did you know about that?
No.
Haven't you heard? I thought everyone had heard.
No, I'm lost.
Okay,
alright, yes, I've seen that.
Now we have a vote Family Guy and the Trash Man.
Alright. Anyway.
Family Guy, vaginas, and birds.
I mean, who wouldn't love this show? Alright. And then I think that this is one of the coolest articles.
Bird-hating gay guys. Because they don't like vaginas.
Alright.
Or birds.
That's the audience that we've isolated with us.
Gays who hate birds.
Gays who hate birds.
Maybe we should pander a little.
Alright.
Birds suck.
No.
They're all smug, flying around,
we
not
touched gay
suckling
issues
around.
because we brought up about gay marriage that we were in support of it. So, I mean, at least two of us did. So, I mean, we did touch on them a little bit. We didn't completely isolate them. So, I think just bird haters, I guess, really, like. That's really the only thing.
There's actually a lot of people who hate birds.
I know. I think
in a weird way, though.
I think it might be
They're
from
like
that
little
movie, The
dinosaurs that
Bird.
can
You ever
fly.
see The Bird?
So for me, it's I like any bird that doesn't shit on my car. Really, that's
I'll
the
like-
crowning moment
So
for
like
me.
ostriches and emus and shit. Like
Flying
things that
beside you
run.
and you're waving. Thanks, bro.
Chickens.
No, I mean individual birds. I like a
Oh.
pigeon as long as it's never vertically placed over my car.
Well, I mean, it can be vertically placed over your car too, as long as it's not doesn't shit on your car, right?
Pigeons don't stop shitting.
The purpose of a pigeon is to shit. That's why God put him on this earth. All right. All right. Now, I think this is one of the coolest articles I've read in a while. So, an indigenous Amazon tribe contacted the outside world for the very first time. Now,
Yeah, what's the outside world?
I want to talk about this for a second because the last time that this happened, the last time we had a tribe that was cut off from the outside, the industrialized world, who had never known anybody off their little island, was in the Southeast Asia during World War II. There were several islands near Japan that we set up air stations on to use for bombing runs.
And Gilligan.
Yep, and Gilligan. But what we did was to essentially pay these people who live on these islands never left their islands. They have no idea with the world outside their islands. So we came in these big metal contraptions flying through the sky. We looked like they do. We landed. We built this like big airstrip out of material that they've never seen or even imagined before in their life. And we gave them, because for use of their island, we would give them food and shit, like supplies, clothing, and whatnot.
Do they worship us?
Yeah, after we left in World War II, they started building shrines to like the airfields and stuff that were set up, and like worshiping this. And some of them, it's a guy named John Frum, and I'm assuming it's just the pilot that flew into the island. Some of them, it's a guy named Tom Navy, which I'm assuming is probably just a guy named Tom from the Navy.
So all you need to do personally to achieve God status is get a plane and find an isolated island.
Yeah, you need a piece of technology and people who don't have the imagination or the capacity to have ever conceived of that technology. To them, it's magic. To them, you're a god.
Alien.
Anything that we call magic is just technology we haven't understood yet. That's all it is.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Direction.
Well, I mean, that's just, you're talking sleight of eye. I'm talking like people who talk about legitimate magic. And there are people who believe in this. Like the idea of transmuting things, the idea of creating things out of thin air. Anytime something like that happens, or even, I think, things that were written down historically, big balls, people who came in big fireballs from the sky. You know?
Big balls are magic, right?
Yeah, big balls are obviously magic. I mean, God would not give you them if they weren't magic.
Yeah, but anything magic, it's unbelievable magic until you achieve it and can explain it, and then it's science.
Right, then it's just science.
For me,
exactly.
For me, it's the same idea. Like, what sounds like magic to me is being able to talk to you from anywhere.
Right.
Like, I mean, we lived as a species for how many hundreds of thousands of years, all right?
You could have told my path in his lifetime, and he would have said, "You're full of shit."
Yeah.
That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. No one is going to sit down and listen to a podcast over the internet, this like gigantic, invisible, interconnected spider web that connects every inch of the globe to the next.
On demand, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
summon
be
it.
about spiders.
Always has to be about spiders.
There's a Elias bird-eating spider at Petco.
Oh, I don't like them. I went to a reptile show with an ex-girlfriend, and she took this petri dish about the size of this thing, and she held it in my face. I didn't want to say what she was showing me, and I was face to face with a spider that was crammed in here. He couldn't fit in there. They had like forced lid on. I never went back to reptile show again in my life.
Well, now that actually takes me into my next article here. In lighter news, man burns down house trying to kill spider with homemade flamethrower.
I support him wholeheartedly.
Right?
Should we let it pass without groaning?
Lighter. Lighter? That's punny. That's very punny.
That's obviously intentional by Brad.
Exactly what I was thinking.
I mean, and I've heard this is definitely not like the most extreme measure I've seen taken against the combat of insects.
So burning an entire house down, you've seen worse?
I'm not saying I've seen worse than somebody burning their house down. I'm saying I've seen worse than people taking what this guy did. He took a can of spray paint and a lighter and used it like a homemade flamethrower to fire it. I've definitely seen people take more extreme measures.
I've done similar things.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never done it in like a flammable part of my home.
I've done that with like an axe, a can of Axe, like with a lighter, and it is like a little flamethrower.
You don't have to get very close.
Like, no, you don't. And it is like I can definitely see someone I know trying to do this and this happening to them. Like this is definitely one of the most relatable articles I think I've ever read, because I think for me anyway, spiders in particular, I just lose my shit when I see a spider.
So do I, and I can't control it.
No, not at all.
Especially you got guns to make up for that.
And Kara knows this, especially because when we're just sitting in bed at night, in particular, and a spider, or even it doesn't matter a spider, any bug comes crawling across like the ceiling or something, it's just a battle to see which one of us has to go kill it. Because neither one of us we're both just paralyzed staring at it like we're afraid for our freaking lives. Like this little like half-centimeter beetle is gonna come down and wipe us out.
It's so ridiculous because you are such a gargantuan creature
right.
to that. Like if it were to attack you with everything it had, it would be like throwing rocks at a freight train.
Right. It's not like you're Hank Pym and you created Ant-Man and you shrunk down to the size of an ant.
Where it's actually a threat.
Yeah. It's not that at all.
But see, for me, mine's more of an autistic fear. It's like the bugs themselves don't inherently frighten me. It's the crawling sensation that I feel just by seeing them move.
Right.
It's not.
You can almost feel it on
if I see a bug like that, doesn't bother me.
Man cards now.
It comes down to the crawling sensation. It's like some kids can't stand the feeling of Play-Doh on their hands, so they freak out and they throw it, and they get put in special classes. I never got a special class for the way I freak out when a bug is crawling on me.
Isn't that, I think, that some of the more diseases that we're seeing and diagnosing in kids is that these were all the things that certain of us had growing up that weren't diagnosed or like considered yet. We all had these things. Yeah, arachnophobia. But I mean, like,
but also think
it's not just arachnophobia. It's the way people freak out about a certain fear.
Like a panicking child drowning in the middle of a swimming pool is how I am with a bug crawling on me. But think about that in our history where we had houses that were infested with bugs. We lived in conditions like that. It was a ready thing. Everyone faced that, before we had more enclosed homes and pesticides and bug repellents. Like, no one was afraid of bugs then.
If you believe Ken Ham too, we also walked the earth. We also walked the earth when there were giant insects.
Hey, how's that?
That man is my hero.
So I mean, like that. I guess that's where the fear of insects came from, because we used to have to deal with millipedes that were as big as we were. Like,
me and Brad almost crashed one day because there was a bumblebee in the car, and it landed on Oliver,
our dog.
Our dog. He was with us, and I freaked out because he kept looking, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. So I reached down at his paw and felt this ginormous bee in my hand, and I just freaked out.
And I think it was a bumblebee. It was a bumblebee that couldn't even sting, I think. But
no, but it was stuck in his fur, because like his fur is fairly long and like scraggly. And I pick him up and try and get the bee off, and I just flick it, and I flicked it on Brad.
No, she didn't flick the bee on me. She threw Oliver on me. When she realized what had happened, what was on our dog, she just hopped at the dog. While driving the vehicle. I'm in operation of a big van that I can't even use the rear view mirror on because we have so much crap stacked up in the back seat that we can't even see out the rear view mirror. And here I have a dog get thrown out on top of me with
a killer bumblebee.
With an unknown bee on it. We don't know it's a bumblebee at this point. We just know it's a bee and it's buzzing. Like,
I've had so many dates go awry because a bug decided to show up in my vehicle.
And at that point, the woman is just like, this guy's
Yeah, so many lack of callbacks. Because a spider crawled down my windshield.
Yep. Freaked out about them all.
Sorry, I cannot let you inside of me. You were scared of a fly. All right.
Like a child.
In lighter news, a World Cup champ pays for 23 kids' surgeries in Brazil to thank the host city. Now, I think the guy's name is Mesut Ozil. He plays for a team in England called Arsenal. He's from the German team, obviously. They're the team that won the World Cup. But, he's one of the guys. There's actually a number of players from the German team that gave all of their winnings, all the money that they earned during the World Cup, they donated Brazilian charities.
You got a bug? Don't stick that on me.
Brazilian charities.
Speaking of bugs. Oh, God.
I'm sorry, I think too little too late. Like, the whole World Cup was hell on the lower class in Sao Paulo and wherever else they had venues.
Well, I think that's an
guy building these venues. Okay, we're going to pay for some kids'
Right.
venues. So, okay.
Well,
Convenient.
You're
correct.
talking about two different things here because you're talking about a player versus the FIFA organization.
Agreed.
He didn't choose where the World Cup was going to be held. As a matter of fact, there were a lot of players who spoke out against the World Cup being held in some of the countries that they've been held in, Brazil being one of them. But when it comes down to time for the World Cup and your nation asks you to represent them as an athlete in the biggest sports tournament in the world, like, I mean, even if you do have objections and you voice them, like, you're still going to play, aren't you? Like, no one's going to turn that down just because they may have an objection to where it's being held. That's an opportunity of a lifetime. But what you do afterward and what you do with the money you've made from doing this kind of a thing sets you apart from the organization that chose this venue.
So wait, are you saying there's a negative argument about this guy donating this money to these kids?
There could be, yes. Because Brazil is a very...
Negative, not necessarily. Convenient, certainly.
Brazil is a very
underclass... guilt complex, I won the World Cup and all these people...
It cost their country way too much money for what it made from the World Cup to have hosted it.
Any professional sport.
So this guy saw opportunity and threw in some money to get good credit from Phil's
you could definitely...
But he could have just been a nice guy with enough money to provide money for surgery.
Well, and I mean, he is. And like I said, there's a lot of German players that have done this with their money. So
what gives him more credit than the others? Because is the Brazil situation?
No, this was just a particular...
Children's surgery. That's what gives him more credit than the others.
Yes,
okay.
Because... Well, and there was this money went directly to these children. It didn't go to an organization. It didn't go to, like, a charity or anything. It went directly to the hospital to pay for these kids.
I hate kids, and I'm all for that. I mean, that's a nice thing to do.
That might be the first and only time you'll hear on this show, but I hate kids.
But if I had the money, like, I would probably donate that more to, like, plastic surgery type situations, mainly.
I think Brazilians have enough models. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, which means they probably have plenty of plastic surgery clinics.
All right.
He could have donated towards.
Next story.
We're into the clinic.
Next story. All right. The GOP candidate mistakes YMCA kids for migrants and describes fear in their faces. Now, I need a second to find this article. I think this is absolutely hilarious.
A conservative talking head saw a bunch of people in a bus.
And
never been in a bus himself.
Migrant.
A campaign bus. I'm kind of scared of those kids. Scared. The fear in their faces.
What led him to think they were immigrants? I never look at a bus and just immediately think immigrants. Unless, it's a tour bus at a gas station, a bunch of Chinese people walk out.
Right. I mean...
And then I think that's tourists. It's not immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to touch that. All right. A Republican running for Congress in Arizona snapped a photo of a passing school bus full of children on Tuesday near a housing facility for undocumented minors. He posted the picture to Twitter with a stern warning to his followers. Bus coming in, this is not compassion. This is the abrogation of the rule of law. Adam Quasman later spoke with a local reporter and described seeing the fear in the children's faces, urging authorities to abide by the law and enforce the border against the influx of child immigrants crossing into the United States.
Child immigrants are the worst, man. You know the first person that immigrated through Ellis Island? 15-year-old girl. Ruined the whole country.
That was it. I mean, the country was just screwed right there. Right with that 15-year-old girl, it was already game over. What I find particularly hilarious about this is he yells at this bus and mistakes them for migrant kids. And starts yelling at them and protest. And then once he figures out that they're YMCA kids, instead of assuming that the fear in their face is from him screaming at them and protesting, No, it's fear from the immigrant housing facility like half a block away. They're afraid of the other immigrant children in this housing facility. Not this guy standing outside our bus screaming at us. We're afraid of the immigrants that's like half a block down. I mean,
because they even understand what immigrants are.
It's so funny because
how old were the children? What age range?
It says like 12 to 13.
And no one touched on a subject that a creepy old conservative was taking pictures of a school bus of young children.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that it just shows the logic of a guy that's willing to yell at a school bus full of children that he thinks might be migrants, that then says the fear in their face wasn't him. I mean, I think that's just the logic behind a guy like that. All right. I know Phil's got to head out here, so I want to try and wrap up one or two more things here, maybe before he heads out, maybe just 10, 15 more minutes. Let's see here. Smallpox vials found in unapproved laboratory. 6 vials of freeze-dried smallpox virus has been found tucked away in a Food and Drug Administration cold storage room. The vials appear to have been stored there since the 1950s. If there's anything more frightening than finding vials of an infectious disease that killed more than 1 billion people before being wiped out, it may be the fact that 10 other vials were in the same box with unreadable labels. Now, isn't that just way to hit it, CDC? Like, because this was a CDC building.
It's all because they stopped teaching cursive. We can read it if we still knew what that was.
What is this foreign script? The Rosetta Stone did not have a translation for this. I mean, it does seem a little ridiculous that, like, the CDC, the place that is supposed to be controlling this shit, just sold their complex to the FDA and said, yeah, contents included, I guess.
Let's see, for me, like, I relate on a human level because we're all human beings, and I see the one guy going into work that was in charge of accountability of the different substances and inventorying them, and he ran out of paperwork. His pen might run out of ink. There's so many different contributing factors where he got to these particular set of files. Like, what do I do with these? He tried to ask around. His manager was out on a smoke break. He couldn't find them. No one had an answer for him. Fuck it. I'm gonna put it in this room over here. We've all been there in our respective places of occupation, okay?
So it was just the, oh my god, okay, the irresponsible employee who
had an off day, didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean,
he made a decision.
You can't have an off day.
He found out that his wife was leaving him, like his dog
That's
died
like
that
saying you
morning.
can't be a human being and work with CDC. We don't have robots that
No, I know that.
technological
I'm
yet.
just saying.
Yes. I mean, I would think Watson might be able to figure some of that shit out. I mean, Watson's a pretty smart computer, man. But again, I think you did hit it a little bit when you said about this is just the government trying to plant the zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely. You can't have that on file.
Yeah. Well, obviously you can't have it on file, and you definitely put it in a place like it's in the back of a storage fridge in unlabeled vials. You were daring somebody to just open one. Right? Like, just, I wonder what's in here. Maybe it's yogurt. You know, like, for all you have no idea. They're unlabeled, right? So you have no idea what's in it.
I think they're distilling a new kind of whiskey or something.
Yeah. I mean, Gurt, that comes in a little tube, right? So these vials aren't that far off.
Now, did you know Gurt is just yogurt?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just yogurt in a little tube. They just call it Gurt.
Talk about conspiracy.
Heifer. I did not know that. Welcome to Central Pennsylvania, people.
A yogurt drink with actual probiotics instead of dead because they were pasteurized probiotics. Probiotics are good because it's for life. Probiotics. I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, Gurt is yogurt.
And we're back.
End on that.
Yeah, I definitely think the yes, Gurt is yogurt. Is just
nothing else
that's
away
it.
from this.
All right, well, we've had fun tonight, and I want to thank Kyle and Phil for coming out. I know they got to head out here, so maybe we can do this again sometime. Definitely.